Welcome to Mihiraa's Healthcare English Podcast, where we explore the cutting-edge advancements in medicine that have the potential to revolutionize healthcare. I'm your host, Callum Jones. Today's episode promises to be a fascinating deep dive into one of the most talked-about areas in modern medical science, stem cell therapy. Joining us is the brilliant Dr. Mihiraa, a leading researcher in regenerative medicine and stem cell technology. Welcome, Dr. Mihiraa.
Thank you, Callum. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to talk about a topic that's very close to my heart and my lab.
Let's start with the basics, Dr. Mihiraa. Stem cells. We've all heard the term, but for those who aren't as well versed in biology, can you explain what exactly stem cells are and why they're so important in medical research today?
Absolutely. Stem cells are essentially the body's raw materials, cells from which all other cells with specialized functions are generated. Think of them as the body's building blocks. Unlike other cells, stem cells are remarkable because they can divide and develop into many different cell types, such as muscle cells, nerve cells, or even blood cells. They have two key properties. They can self-renew, meaning they can divide and replicate themselves indefinitely, and they can differentiate, which means they can transform into a wide range of specialized cells.
Wow, so they're like the body's personal repair kit, but on a much grander scale.
Exactly, Callum. What makes stem cells particularly exciting for us in medicine is their potential to repair or replace damaged tissue in the body. For instance, in conditions like heart disease or neurodegenerative disorders, where specific tissues or cells are damaged, stem cells could theoretically be used to regenerate those tissues, offering potentially groundbreaking treatments.
That's amazing. Now, Dr. Mihiraa, I know there are different types of stem cells: embryonic stem cells, adult stem cells, and induced pluripotent stem cells. Could you break those down for our listeners? What are the differences, and why does it matter?
Absolutely. Let's start with embryonic stem cells. These are derived from early-stage embryos and are pluripotent, meaning they can develop into almost any type of cell in the body. Because of their versatility, embryonic stem cells hold huge potential for regenerating damaged tissues. However, their use is controversial due to ethical concerns regarding the destruction of embryos. Then we have adult stem cells, which are more limited in their potential. Unlike embryonic stem cells, they are often multipotent, meaning they can develop into a few related types of cells. For instance, hematopoietic stem cells found in bone marrow can give rise to various blood cells, but not other types, like neurons or muscle cells. Adult stem cells are already used in therapies such as bone marrow transplants, which have been performed for decades in treating leukemia and other blood disorders. Lastly, we have induced pluripotent stem cells, or iPSCs. These are adult cells that have been genetically reprogrammed to behave like embryonic stem cells, capable of becoming nearly any type of cell. The beauty of iPSCs is that they offer much of the same versatility as embryonic stem cells, but without the ethical dilemmas.
So, iPSCs sound like the best of both worlds: no ethical concerns and similar benefits to embryonic stem cells. Is that right?
In theory, yes. Induced pluripotent stem cells represent a huge leap forward because we can take cells from a patient's skin, for example, and reprogram them into stem cells that can potentially repair their own organs. But, of course, as with any cutting-edge science, there are challenges. Genetic modifications could carry risks, and ensuring the stability and safety of these cells is crucial before we can widely implement these therapies.
That leads me to the next question: where are we right now in terms of real-world applications? Are we already seeing stem cell therapies in action, Dr. Mihiraa?
Yes, we are. While many applications are still in the experimental or clinical trial phase, there are already several therapies available. The most established use of stem cells is in hematopoietic stem cell transplants, commonly known as bone marrow transplants. This has been used to treat blood disorders like leukemia, lymphoma, and certain genetic diseases for decades. Another exciting area is corneal stem cell transplants, which are being used to restore vision in patients with damaged corneas. Beyond that, there's ongoing research into treating a range of conditions using stem cells, everything from type 1 diabetes, where the goal is to replace damaged insulin-producing cells in the pancreas, to spinal cord injuries, where researchers are exploring how stem cells might repair nerve damage.
That sounds like science fiction come to life. But, of course, there are challenges, right? What are some of the barriers we still face in making stem cell therapy more mainstream?
Indeed, there are significant challenges. First and foremost, safety is a big concern. One major risk is the potential for uncontrolled growth, leading to tumors or cancers. Another challenge is immune rejection. If the stem cells come from a donor rather than the patient, the body might reject them, much like it could reject a transplanted organ. Then there's the issue of scalability and cost. Producing stem cells in large enough quantities for treatments and ensuring they behave consistently is not easy. The technology is still quite expensive, which limits access. We're also facing regulatory hurdles, as stem cell therapies need to pass through rigorous testing and approval processes to ensure they're safe and effective.
You mentioned ethical concerns earlier, especially around embryonic stem cells. Could you dive a little deeper into the ethical debates surrounding stem cell research?
Absolutely, this is a crucial topic. The use of embryonic stem cells has been controversial because the cells are harvested from early-stage embryos, typically left over from in vitro fertilization procedures. This raises questions about the moral status of the embryo. Some argue that destroying an embryo is equivalent to taking a potential human life, while others emphasize the potential for these cells to save lives through the development of new treatments for debilitating diseases. On the other hand, induced pluripotent stem cells largely sidestep these ethical issues because they don't involve the use of embryos. But even with iPSCs, we have to be cautious about how we handle genetic manipulation. There's an ongoing debate about whether creating and using cells in this way might lead to unforeseen consequences, particularly when we start considering gene editing technologies like CRISPR, which could potentially be used alongside stem cells.
It sounds like a classic case of balancing moral concerns with scientific progress. Where do you see the future of stem cell ethics heading?
I believe that, moving forward, we'll need continuous dialogue between scientists, ethicists, policymakers, and the public. We're likely to see stricter regulatory frameworks put in place, especially around newer technologies. And hopefully, we'll find a middle ground that allows research to move forward while respecting ethical boundaries. I'm optimistic because, as we develop more alternatives like iPSCs, we're getting closer to solutions that could provide life-saving treatments without crossing too many ethical lines.
Speaking of the future, what excites you most about where stem cell research is headed? What breakthroughs do you think we might see in the next decade, Dr. Mihiraa?
Where do I even begin? There are so many exciting developments. One area I'm particularly enthusiastic about is personalized medicine. As I mentioned earlier, we can already take a patient's own cells, reprogram them into stem cells, and use them to repair damaged tissues. This could be transformative for conditions like heart disease, where we might be able to regrow heart muscle tissue after a heart attack, or Parkinson's disease, where stem cells could be used to regenerate dopamine-producing neurons in the brain. Another incredible area is bioengineering and organ regeneration. Scientists are working on growing entire organs in the lab using stem cells, which could one day eliminate the need for organ donors entirely. Imagine being able to grow a new liver or kidney from a patient's own cells. That's the direction we're heading.
It's mind-blowing. So, do you think we'll actually see lab-grown organs in our lifetime?
I believe so. We're already seeing promising results in animal models, and I think it's only a matter of time before we translate that into human applications. The timeline is difficult to predict because of the many regulatory and technical challenges, but I'm hopeful that within the next couple of decades, we'll see lab-grown organs become a reality.
As we look to the future, I imagine there are also potential risks. Dr. Mihiraa, what are some of the more cautionary tales that we should be mindful of?
Yes, the potential for misuse is a real concern. For instance, the rise of unregulated stem cell clinics offering unproven treatments is troubling. These clinics promise miraculous cures, but without the rigorous testing and approval processes required for legitimate therapies, patients can be exposed to serious risks. We've already seen cases where patients have developed tumors or infections from unregulated stem cell treatments. Moreover, there's always the risk that, in our enthusiasm for advancing the science, we may move too quickly. Regulatory oversight is crucial to ensure that the therapies we bring to market are both safe and effective. That said, I remain hopeful that with responsible science and ethical oversight, we're on the cusp of a medical revolution.
That's a sobering but necessary reminder. To wrap things up, what's your message to anyone listening who's curious about the potential of stem cell therapy? Should they be hopeful?
Absolutely. There's so much potential in stem cell research, and while we must proceed cautiously, the future is incredibly bright. For anyone facing a medical condition that might benefit from stem cell therapies, my advice is to stay informed. Look for legitimate, evidence-based treatments and follow the progress of clinical trials. We're still in the early stages of unlocking all the possibilities stem cells offer, but I firmly believe they will change the way we treat disease in the very near future.
Well, there you have it, a deep dive into the future of medicine. Thank you, Dr. Mihiraa, for sharing your knowledge and insights on stem cell therapy with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure was mine, Callum. Thanks for having me.